Osi Umenyiora is a sports pundit and former NFL player for the New York Giants and the Atlanta Falcons, a two-time Super Bowl champion and one of the sport's only British players. He retired from the NFL, having made 435 tackles, 85 sacks, and 4 touchdowns. He has since joined the BBC as a pundit for the corporation's growing international NFL coverage. He has received the award for his work in the media, including the 2018 Sports Journalists Association British Sports Pundit of the Year Award. OC, with that, it's a pleasure having you join us this evening.
Thank you. Thanks for having me, man. This is a real honor to be in front of you guys. Let's get it cracking.
With that, I'm going to start about your asking questions about your background. So you were born in London, but moved to Nigeria when you were 7, and then finally to the States when you were 14. You've had a career now that spans professionally 2 of these continents, but I wanted to know, where do you feel most at home? Where do you believe your identity and your roots are?
Wow, that is an incredible first question. I think it's a really difficult question to answer because honestly, people from here, I was born here in England, but people from here think I'm American, and people in America think I'm Nigerian, and people in Nigeria think I'm a combination of American and British. So I don't really have like a set identity in any one of those 3 cultures. I just identify with all 3 of them equally. My parents were Nigerian. I have very, very, very deep Nigerian roots. I was raised in a very Nigerian way, so to speak. And I go back there quite a bit. If I was to pick any one of those places to say that I'm more familiar with or more encompassing with, it would have to be Nigeria.
Amazing. And like I said, when you moved to the US at just the age of 14, had you ever played American football before? Do you have any experience of the sport, or had you even played other sports at a high level?
Not only had I never played football, I had never seen American football before. I didn't even know what it was. It was incredible to witness them playing it for the first time. I thought they were literally out of their minds. To see them running around and hitting each other because I didn't understand the game. The only games that I really knew was obviously soccer, which you guys call football. That was my first love. That was the only thing I loved to do all the way up until I was 14 years old. Played a little bit of basketball because as I was growing up, you know, the Bulls came in, the Michael Jordans and all of them, and that was like a really big thing internationally. So we really became, we got involved with basketball because of that, but my entire life, even up until this day, has been mostly soccer. American football wasn't even a consideration until I got to America, where it is by far the most dominant sport, not even close.
Amazing. And I believe you played high school football just for 2 years alongside DeMarcus Ware, which is quite an intimidating team to come up against for any high school team in Alabama. Did you ever expect, however, to play college football, having only spent 2 years actually playing at a high school level?
Not at all. It wasn't even a consideration, to be completely honest. I think my whole thing coming from Nigeria was education, and Nigerian parents are all about education. Sports isn't really a thought in their mind. It's just something you do for fun. So coming to America, where you can actually use sports to get an education, I think was crazy to me. It was a foreign, it was a novel concept to me. And actually coming over there and starting to play football, I really wasn't that good. My first year I wasn't good. My second year I was a decent player. And the story of how I actually got a scholarship to Troy University is an incredible story. I don't know if you have time for me to tell that story, but one day maybe I'll get into that.
Yeah, please tell the story.
Are you ready for this, Johnny? You sure?
I'm ready. I'm very ready, Osi. Don't worry.
All right, cool. So I'd finished my high school career. Actually, nobody recruited me. I hadn't gotten a scholarship offer from anybody. And I was actually supposed to be taking this driver's education class. And what happened was I had stopped going to the class because I was already driving. I already had my driver's license and I was driving my sister's car to school. So I stopped going to the class. And so what happened was, towards the ending of my school year, because I wasn't going to that class, I got in trouble because I just wasn't showing up. In my head, I was like, I'm not showing up to this class. I already know how to drive. And so I got in trouble. And so the principal called me into her office. She was like, listen, you know, you haven't been going to this class. So now you're going to go to in-school suspension, which was an area in school where they put you for, you know, bad behavior. And so I go to in-school suspension, and when I'm in in-school suspension, the guy who is in charge of in-school suspension just so happened to be the running backs coach of the high school. His name was James Joseph. So I'm sitting in there in in-school suspension. This is my first day, mind you. And the guy asked me, he's like, what are you going to do with your life? I'm like, I'm going to go to school. That's what I came here for. He was like, I think, you know, you haven't really gotten a fair shot. I think you're a really good athlete. Maybe let me call one of my friends to see if you can walk on at his college. I was like, okay, no problem, cool. So he calls the guy Tracy Rocker, who's the defensive line coach at Troy, and him and James Joseph, who's the running backs coach, they actually played at Auburn University together, so they knew each other real well. So he calls Tracy Rocker and he's like, listen, I got this kid here that I want you to look at. And Tracy just so happened to be in Auburn at the time visiting his parents. So Tracy was like, all right, cool. I'll come over there and see you. So he literally left his parents' house right when James Joseph called him, and he came to where I was sitting in school suspension to come see me. And so he saw me, I was a big kid. He was like, James called me, so I know you have something to you. Can you run? I was like, yeah, I'm pretty fast. So he took me outside from in-school suspension, and they timed me in the 40-yard dash, and I was just blazing fast. And so he was like, all right, cool. Well, you're big, you can run. He looked at my tape. He was like, you don't really know what you're doing, but I think we're going to give you a chance. So he called the head coach of Troy, who was Larry Blakeney at the time. And he was like, listen, we got this big kid here. He can run. He looks like he's a little raw. I was 16 at the time, but we should give him a chance. And so Larry Blakeney was like, okay, cool. And so they gave me a scholarship to go to college, literally within 1 hour of me being in school suspension. And that's how I got to college.
Amazing. You mentioned how in a Nigerian family, education obviously takes priority. When you got that offer to go and study at Troy, which mattered more to you? Was it the education, or was it the ability to go and play football and play?
The education, because, getting the education for free, for me, was not something that I even considered. I was trying to figure out a way how I was going to pay for college, but this all of a sudden just fell into my lap. And so for me, it was all about education. Playing in the NFL, you have to understand that at this point in time, I wasn't like a highly recruited guy. Nobody knew who I was. I wasn't, in my mind, a really good player. So the thought of going pro wasn't even a thought in my head. It was just like, wow, I'm going to go to school for free. And so it was all good.
Now, at Troy, you had a successful career. And we both now know that you were drafted in the second round of the 2003 draft, but you weren't, in fact, invited to the preceding draft combine. Did you therefore think that your professional career in the NFL was over before it even began?
No, I knew I was going to get an opportunity. I just thought maybe I was going to go a little bit later than I was. Getting drafted in the second round and, not going to the combine, it had never really been done before up until that point, especially that high. So for me, it was, I was thinking I was probably going to go in the 5th or the 6th round, nowhere near the first or second round. So when the draft was happening, I wasn't even really paying attention. I was just at home by myself. My parents weren't even there, nothing. I was just watching the draft on TV. And then all of a sudden, my agent called me. He's like, listen, I think they're about to draft you. And I was like, what are you talking about? He was like, yeah, they're about to draft you. And right after that, I got the phone call from the Giants. And so I got drafted in the second round, but I didn't expect to go that high. I thought I was going to go in like the 5th or 6th rounds. Ended up working out pretty well.
Amazing. And when you did get drafted by the Giants, you got off to a flying start. And it's the first season you were selected for the Pro Bowl after years of hard work. In your discussion, as you previously said, academic suspension and difficulty whether you even would go to college or not, and moving across continents twice. What did it mean for you, this successful moment, when you were sat there, as you said, watching it from your room on your own? What did that success mean for you?
It was bittersweet, obviously, because nobody was there to really witness it happen at first. And then, given the fact that I went that high, I felt like a whole bunch of pressure. And this is just how I am in general. I don't never really get too happy when something good happens. I immediately start thinking of what I need to do. And this is something that I feel like I need to work on better, which is enjoying the moment. Because for me, it's okay, these guys have drafted me this high. Now I got to go prove to them why I was drafted this high. So I think it was a little bit later on in my career that I really got to enjoy the journey and got to enjoy exactly what it was that had happened and transpired. Because to come from where I came from and to have done what I've done, it's almost impossible. And it was a difficult thing to do.
Yeah. In 2007, and this is a question about your love for the game and what it means to you to play, you set a franchise record for the Giants with 6 sacks against the Philadelphia Eagles, but also later down in the same season, you scored your first ever touchdown. What meant more to you as a defensive player, getting those points on the board or protecting your game line?
Oh, definitely getting those 6 sacks. That was people have scored touchdowns before. Defensive players have scored touchdowns before, but And the Giants have been around since 1925. Nobody had ever recorded 6 sacks before. So me being able to do that and really put myself on the map. I'd been to the Pro Bowl earlier. People already knew who I was, but I think doing something of that magnitude definitely trumps scoring touchdowns for me.
Did you feel that the 6 sacks was a greater accomplishment and achievement for yourself or for the team and for the Giants as a community?
Definitely for myself. We ended up winning both games, so they were both a big part in me getting those sacks and me scoring that touchdown. Those were pivotal moments in the game. But for me personally, I think getting that amount of sacks was definitely the better thing.
Yeah. Now, as I said in the introduction, you didn't just win 1 Super Bowl, you won 2, 2008 and 2012, putting you as just one of 5 Brits to do so alongside like Jay Ajayi. Which Super Bowl meant more to you, though, Habit? Was it the first, especially like against an unbeaten season Patriots, or was it the second as you were kind of heading towards the end of your career and already spent several years with the Giants?
The first one, for sure. The second one was nice, but we went into the second one. People thought, we had a chance to win. We went into that game knowing we were going to win the game. The first one was surreal. And to actually think about that now, just, it brings goosebumps because nobody gave us a chance. Nobody gave us a shot to win that game. I'm pretty sure my mother didn't think we were going to win that game. So to go into a situation like that, playing against a team that had all the accolades, the highest ranked offense ever, undefeated, they were on the verge of doing something historic, and to face a scrappy football team like us, and for us to play the way we played, and for the fact that it was the way we played as a defensive line, that was what won the game. To be so heavily involved in doing something so monumental, the first one was by far the most enjoyable.
Obviously, the Super Bowls will stand out as kind of career highlights, but were there any other moments in your career playing in the NFL that also stand out that people might not know about? Any stories that you've got to share?
I have a couple. I think the first time I got elected to the Pro Bowl, I remember I was on the practice field when the coach came out and he was like, "Listen, you've been selected to play in your first Pro Bowl." I think I was in my third year at the time, and just the realization that, in such a short period of time, I had ascended to be one of the best players at my position, if not the best player at my position at that time, was ridiculous to me. That was a really good one. I think the first Super Bowl, standing on the field after it and just looking around and, looking at the faces of the Giants fans and seeing how they felt and the passion, and they were crying and carrying on. It was amazing to know that we had done something like that for them. I think the second Pro Bowl I went to, I was on the field and I looked to my left and I saw DeMarcus Ware, and we were both on the same team, and he was on the other side. I was on one side, he was on the other side. And, I went to high school with DeMarcus. We rode the same bus together. We played college ball together, and here we were in the NFL together. 2 of the best players at our position on opposite sides. That was another incredible moment for me. So there's been quite a few, but I'll say those are the ones that stand out most.
Obviously, you mentioned your relationship with DeMarcus Ware. Are there any other significant players who you still maintain close contact with? Great friends. Anyone particularly that stands out during your time?
Yeah, I think you have to think about the defensive line guys, the guys who I really played with, the Justin Tucks, the Michael Strahans, the Dave Tollefsons, the Jason Pierre-Pauls. We have a group chat that we're literally talking every day, sending just foul messages back and forth to each other. We have a really good time, and we formed a bond there that, quite frankly, is unbreakable because of some of the things that we went through and some of the things we were able to do.
Has the group chat got a good name?
No, it's just D-line. It's just the D-line. It's really simple.
Unfortunately, injury obviously played a big part in ending your career. Do you think that the NFL as a league does enough to protect players?
Well, I think there's really only so much they can do. It's a physical sport. It is a contact sport. There is literally 100% chance of you getting injured. Nobody escapes from that sport without being injured. They're not just going to give you that amount of money and you just walk away scot-free. That's just not the way the world works. So I think going in, maybe a little bit earlier, there wasn't that much knowledge about some of the things that go on. But now everybody who plays is fully aware of the risk. Everybody is fully aware of the repercussions. And so if you play the game, you play the game at your own risk, knowing what's going on. They do quite a few things to protect mainly the quarterbacks. But, you know, we're people too, and they're doing some of those things to protect, you know, defensive linemen and offensive linemen. But I think they're doing the best they can right now without eliminating the brutal nature of the game, which makes it so visceral and makes it so interesting to watch.
Have you seen any significant change from when you first got drafted and then when you retired and now as a pundit, any significant change that the league is bringing forward, not necessarily just in protecting players, but improving the league as a whole itself?
Well, outside of the protection of players, you know, I don't really see too much of that. I think they've really taken a very high interest in protecting the players. I think it's also skewed more towards the offense now, with a lot of the rules in place to allow for all these high scoring offenses to put more points on the board, because quite frankly, that's what fans want to see. The defensive players, we enjoy a good old slugfest, but you know, for the fans, they want to see high flying offenses. They want to see touchdowns. They want to see all those things. And so the NFL as a business is trying to give the people what they want, so to speak, and give the fans that. A lot of the rules are lax and they are in favor of the offense. And I have to say that I understand why it's that way.
Having had a successful career on the field and eventually when you retired, did it make sense? Did you always expect that you would enter into the media side of the game?
No, quite frankly, I didn't want to do anything when I retired. I just wanted to just go to an island somewhere and enjoy myself, because you know, being in the NFL and the rigors and the stress and the things that you do to yourself, to your body, to your mind, it takes a toll on you. And so for me, I just wanted to not do anything. But, you know, I remember when I was playing, the first time we came out here in 2007, we came to London to play a game. And I just remember coming outside and going into Wembley Stadium to play and looking around, there was 80,000 people there. And because in America, you're in such a bubble, you're insulated from the rest of the world in regards to the way the NFL is. I couldn't quite wrap my head around the fact that there were so many fans of football outside of America. So seeing that, I was like, wow, this is incredible. If I ever do work in the NFL or work in broadcasting or work in the production side, it would be in London. It would be outside of America, because I didn't want to do what everybody else was doing in there. It just made no sense to me. And so, yeah, I started to have conversations with Mark Waller and Alistair Kirkwood about, you know, some of the things that I would do and some of the things that I would come help them do once I retired. And as soon as I retired, literally within a week, I started coming out here back and forth, you know, working, doing things of that nature. And now recently, I decided that we were going to be out here full time.
As you said, when you played in Wembley, was there a special meaning for you when you played at Wembley? Did it feel almost like you'd gone full circle, you'd kind of come home, you'd gone from, you know, living in London to Nigeria, you'd made it big in America, and now you were back home? Was there any feeling like that when you walked into the stadium?
Yeah, it was crazy. I think obviously Wembley is such an iconic stadium, and you know, just being in there and then the shock of seeing all those people out there. And then, you know, I hadn't seen my mother in so long, and you know, she came to London to watch the game, and my family was in the stands, and you know, I was looking everywhere. I was seeing the Nigerian flags and the English flags, and you know, I was saying "God Save the Queen" and everything. Man, I was into it. It was amazing to have done all that, and you know, to be back here where I was basically born, and to play a game in front of all those people.
On the discussion topic of Wembley, and I'm sure you've had this question dozens of times, do you ever think that there is a serious chance that London will have its own NFL team, or do you think just logistically, financially, it just doesn't make sense?
Well, that's what we're here for. Logistically, I like to say they found a way to put a man on the moon. So if they can do that, they can damn sure figure out a way to put a team in London if the financial aspect of it makes sense. And I think this is what we're trying to figure out right now. This is what the back and forth it really has been about: is financially, how can we make it make sense? Logistically, how can we make it make sense? How can we make sure that the teams who do come out here and play aren't at a disadvantage against the other teams or the team that is a home team? And I think once we figure that all out, I think you're going to see sooner rather than later a franchise based over here. I think you see the escalation of games from 1 game to 2 games to 3 games to 4 games. And the NFL definitely has designs on expanding globally, expanding internationally. And the next step for me is placing a franchise outside of the United States of America. And here's the most logical place to do it.
I was going to actually ask you a question on the discussion of expanding the NFL. Where do you see the NFL as going? Because obviously, as you say, it's American football by name. It is largely, by and large, restricted to North America, with the exception of Wembley and fans here and a few other countries. How do you think that the NFL can move the game forwards across the world?
I think it's important to realize that the NFL is a business. I know it presents itself as a game and, it's all fan friendly and all that good stuff, but it is a business first and foremost. And in order for it to generate an increased amount of revenue, the American market is saturated. So there's no more room. It has literally sucked up all the air in America. It is the biggest sport there by far. And so in order for it to expand, or in order for it to generate new streams of revenue, it has to expand globally. So I think the first place you want to look at is a place that has the same kind of culture to America. I know in the era of Donald Trump, it might seem like it's not the same culture, but there's similarities there. And so I think the most logical place would be here first. And then from here, you could base the hub where it can be the entire Europe can kind of coalesce around this franchise here in the United Kingdom. So I think the push so far and what we've been doing since 2007, they've been doing this since maybe like the early 2000s, is to try to bring a franchise here, is to try to grow the sport here as much as we can, to see if we have the fan base that can actually hold and host an actual permanent franchise.
Now, you've of course had a very successful career on the media side post-retirement. Do you think you could ever see yourself going into coaching or any other role within teams directly?
Coaching, no. Definitely can't involve myself in being a coach. I can help, but the reason why I wouldn't coach is because I know a lot of those guys are knuckleheads just like I was, and it's a very difficult thing to coach people like me. It's not easy at all, and so it's so time consuming. It's work. I think it's so much harder than just, oh, I want you to do this, I want you to do that. The game, the intricacies of the game. The way the game is just constantly changing, and the dynamics and the things that you have to do. Those guys are literally working from 6 a.m. to like 12 at night. It's a ridiculous grind to be a coach in the NFL because of how intelligent and how intricate the game is. And so for me, the amount of work that I did as a player will not allow me to actually work quite that hard as being a coach. Now, are there other things that I can do in regards to the NFL? Of course. I work for the NFL now. I'm not really broadcasting is one thing, but I'm involved in so many other things in regards to the NFL. There's so many different projects that we have gotten underway since I've been here in the UK that are being very successful. So I'm involved in the NFL on one side and also involved in broadcasting and production. So it's been interesting.
Are there any exciting, interesting projects down the line that you can talk about?
Yeah, actually, I'm in the process of building an academy. Obviously, the NFL has an academy here in London, and that's going really well. I know you probably heard about the international player pathway that we developed, which actually brings in players from overseas and gives them a chance to play in the NFL on a practice squad. But I'm building an academy myself in my village, my father's village of Nigeria. And the way I look at it, I think there's an opportunity there to harvest the natural athleticism of the Nigerian people, which is it's incredible. But the way I see things being done here, it's in regards to the soccer academies. I don't really like that because it doesn't give them much of a chance to education. So I really want to replicate the exact same journey I had, but for as many talented African athletes as possible. So we're building the academy there, mostly for American football and soccer. We're going to teach them how to code also. But what we're trying to do is give them a chance to come to, whether that's America or come out here to the academy out here at an earlier age and start their football journey earlier while also getting the education. So if in fact it doesn't work for them and they don't make it to the NFL, at least they have that education to fall back on, which they wouldn't have gotten in Nigeria. And also, if they would have stuck with soccer doesn't do that. It's almost like you either play on an academy or you're done. But I want these kids to actually get an education because long term, I feel like that's what the success is.
Incredible. On the discussion topic of Nigeria, I saw you recently discussing with Jason Bell the NSARS campaign. Do you feel now that you've amassed a large platform and a following, and you are a media personality in many ways as a pundit, do you feel a responsibility to raise awareness for important issues?
I think it's very important. Unfortunately for us as Black people, I think it's important to understand that most of us who are in the public eye or who have the limelight, we are athletes and entertainers. We don't have too many Mark Zuckerbergs and Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos. We don't have too many of them. We need to build to a point where we have people like that who are able to make real change. So for now, all we have are athletes and entertainers and people of that nature. So we are the ones who have to speak. I think it's also very important that as you're speaking, you're just not following the crowd. I think it's important that as you're speaking, you're actually giving people real knowledge and real information that they can use and not just spouting out talking points. Because I think right now you have people who are just following the crowd. They're saying these things. They're saying, whether it's NSARS and, this matters or whatever it is that you're saying. These are really, really important things, but make sure you understand the meaning behind what you're saying and why you're saying that. And I think a lot more athletes need to take some time to think about that.
In addition to that, I saw recently you, I think it was on Locker Room, discussing whether you take a knee or not, and you had a really nuanced opinion. Would you be able to share that opinion with the people here today?
Yeah, in regards to whether or not I would take an knee, I said I wouldn't. And it's not because I don't support the movement. I 100% support the movement. I think it's very, very important what these Black American athletes are doing, or even the athletes out here in the United Kingdom. But I think from my perspective, you have to understand where I came from and the things that I saw. And I'm seeing right now, we're talking about NSARS is police brutality in Nigeria. And this is all Black people doing it to each other. And so I'm not going to be able to see those things going over there and going on over there, see all the things that I saw growing up and then come somewhere else and start protesting, because that hasn't been my reality. My reality has been something completely different. And I also know that I must address those those that are going on in Nigeria first before I come over here or before I go to the United States of America and start making those statements. If you're a Black American or if you're a Black British, you've seen things one way, you've grown up in this community, you've grown up in this environment, and things, you haven't been treated fair. So you should protest, you should use your platform. But coming from where I come from, coming over here, I've been treated extremely well, to be completely honest with you. And I need to fix the things that are going on back in Nigeria first, and then I can come over here and make any form of protest that's necessary.
Amazing. Now that we've hit past, I'm going to head to audience questions. So if anyone's watching and has a question, please, like I said, make sure to use the Q&A function. The first question we've got is William from Oriel College. He says, do you think a combination of professional sports and education helps to bring more talented players to the game and directly causes the success and the popularity of American football?
Whew, that's very, very interesting, man, because you will usually find that the most talented athletes, they're not the most educated. That's just not the way it works. So I think finding a way to balance both, I think, is very, very important, because you actually need a high level of intelligence to play American football. The playbook is literally that thick, and you got to learn and memorize all those plays. And now the game is getting more and more complex. And so the intelligence is definitely necessary, but also the athleticism is paramount to the game. So you have to find a way to marry the two. And if you're able to do that, I think that'll enable much more success. I don't know if I even answered the question. I'm sorry if I didn't.
Our second question coming from Elliot Sturge. He says, do you think the NFL has done a good job of trying to achieve a regular season as possible during the current pandemic?
They've done fantastic. I didn't think they were going to be able to pull this off, to be completely honest with you. I know they have some extremely smart people, but all the other sports went into a bubble situation where you can kind of dictate who comes in and how things go. But the NFL decided against that because, quite frankly, logistically, it would be impossible to do so. And so they had to keep the team separated and, guys coming in and out, but the amount of testing that they've been able to do and the strict protocols and the rigorous activities that they do has kept those numbers down. And quite frankly, I think it's a fantastic credit to them. They've done an incredible job.
Paul Robson from University College has asked, what do you think of the Falcons post Quinn and Dimitroff? Tank for Trevor or 11-5?
Ooh, 11-5. I'm not so sure about that. I think they can go 8-8. I really enjoy the coach that they have there now, Raheem. But Dan Quinn was a fantastic coach. Thomas Dimitrov, I played for the Falcons. He's a fantastic people. I hated to see that happen for him. But at the end of the day, there was something wrong with that franchise, and something needed to be fixed. I'm hoping they can at least go 8-8 and give Raheem a chance for the next couple of years to see if he can right that franchise.
On a discussion of coaches, and I've asked about specific players, were there any coaches, not just in your career at the NFL, but also maybe at college level or even high school, that stand out as kind of being mentors, the people who really set the ball rolling in motion, or who you think you have a gratitude to pay for your career kind of thing?
Oh, I would say obviously the coach James Joseph, and an in-school suspension, who decided to make that phone call, because if he didn't, I wouldn't be sitting here right now. Todd Freeman was another guy in my high school who was really instrumental. He was the guy who believed in me. And I think in the NFL, definitely had a guy by the name of Mike Waffle. He was a defensive line coach, fantastic human being, fantastic coach. He really helped me out quite a bit too. And Robert Nunn also. I've had some really good coaches.
Amazing. Our next question is from, and I apologize to anyone if I say names incorrectly, Huelia. They say, can you speak to the difficulties that the NFL has with balancing the high drama aggression that obviously gets the fans going and is a big part of the entertainment product, with the protection of player safety, and how you feel the future of the balancing act looks?
Wow. That's a great question. I think they're doing pretty much all they can right now. You don't want to take away too much of the aggression of the sport, because people will stop watching. Oddly enough, the barbarity of the sport is what really gets people going, and you see those vicious hits. And so you don't want to take that away. But in the other hand, you don't want people suffering from CTE and all these debilitating diseases that come along with playing in the National Football League. So they're doing the best that they can right now. They're trying to protect players as much as they can. It's a completely different league in terms of the way things are. From when I played, you can barely touch the quarterback now. There's so much protections in place. And I think this right here is pretty much the cutoff point for protection, and people are just going to have to deal with the repercussions now.
Lewis Tim says, hey, OC, did you see Jay Bell on Strictly last weekend, and what did you make of his footwork?
I did see Jay Bell. I watched about the first 30 minutes of it. And, I'm happy for Jason. I'm happy he was there. I think he did pretty well. Hopefully he's going to be able to win this whole thing and bring it on home.
And a question coming through anonymously. Did you feel welcomed by your teammates in your first season in the NFL? Or did you feel any isolation or alienation because you were in the minority coming from the UK and Nigeria?
No, not at all. I think because I had been to Troy State University and I was there for all 4 years, I kind of assimilated myself with the culture. When I get on the football field, I was a pretty good football player. And the one thing about the NFL, the one thing about sports in general is, if you're a good football player, nothing else really matters. They look at you, like the guy that you are, because you can play, because everything is so geared towards winning. And so once I got on that football field and I proved myself that I was a good player, I assimilated immediately.
Joshua Wallace from Jesus College says, who do you think is the most exciting rookie in the NFL this year?
Well, obviously, you want to look at the guy, Henry Ruggs. Also, you want to look at Justin Jefferson, the wide receiver for the Minnesota Vikings, who has like 500 and something yards right now. He's off to a fantastic start. Didn't really think that guy was going to be able to come in and perform the way he's performed, especially taking the place of a Stephon Diggs, but he's a fantastic player and he's doing really good things.
Bradley Young from St. Anne's College says, do you think there are barriers to Black and ethnic minority students accessing higher education, and how can these be addressed? Do sports scholarships help this or perpetuate stereotypes?
I think the barriers to these players naturally are from the actual demographic or the place where they are from. You see a lot of these kids, African-American kids from difficult backgrounds. The problem starts so early that they never even get to the point where they can get a college education. So I think those are the barriers. The poverty is the main key, and the poverty is the main driver of a lot of the issues that we face today. And this is what needs to be addressed. As long as you're able to get kids a proper education from an early start, from a fundamental start, I think you see that they'll be a lot more successful a little bit later on. Now, is this a problem? You could look at it and say, yes, it is a problem in regards to like athletes and, the stereotype of, oh, you're in college because you're an athlete. I get that. But on the other hand, these athletics are creating multimillionaires. These athletics are creating people who otherwise wouldn't have had that education. So you have to embrace it, but you also have to understand that from a much earlier age where the problems need to really be addressed.
Tal has asked, what do you think the new name of the Washington team should be?
I have no idea, man. I'm not a big Washington guy. They were a rival of mine, Washington, Philly, Dallas. I don't care about those guys, man. So I apologize. They could just the Washington Sorries, man. That'll make me happy because I don't like Washington.
Another question coming through. Who are your picks for the Super Bowl this year?
Really difficult to pick right now. If I'm going to say anybody, I'll say maybe Tampa Bay coming out of the NFC and the AFC. You would bet that Patrick Mahomes and the Kansas City Chiefs would probably be there at the end because they're the most talented squad. They have the best quarterback. Their defense is playing outstanding. And I picked Tampa Bay not because of the alleged GOAT, Tom Brady. I picked Tampa Bay because of that defense. Their defense is fantastic also.
Toby Springings has asked, are the Browns just setting it up for the latest spin on another blown season?
The Browns right now, they need to figure out what their quarterback is going to do. To me, Baker Mayfield is a front-running quarterback, which means that as long as the running game is very effective and the defense is playing well, he looks like he is a championship quarterback. But the minute that running game isn't effective and the defense isn't playing well, and he has to carry that football team on his arm, you find that he's not really efficient. And so they need to work that out. And as soon as they do, they have all the talent in the world on both sides of the football. They can actually make a run for something.
Rick has asked, can you see any hope for either of the New York teams in the near future?
In the near future, yes. I like Joe Judge, the coach of the New York Giants. He's a tough guy, hard-nosed. He seems to have his head on in the right direction. Adam Gase, I'm not sure what's going on with him with the Jets. They've been pretty bad for a while now, but Joe Judge, I think he's the right guy for the New York Giants, and they have a good nucleus of players. They obviously need to draft better. They traded away quite a few of their really good players. I didn't like that at all, but they need to get better for sure, and I think they're very capable of doing that.
What do you make of the XFL, and do you think there are certain things that the NFL can learn from it?
No, I don't think they can really learn anything from the XFL, but I think the XFL is a very good idea because there is a bit of a gap in the market there in regards to the lesser players. And I think taking advantage of that is a good thing. You leave college, you can actually develop a little bit. If you look at it from a developmental standpoint, I think it can actually do something. And there's such an appetite for football in America that they should have some success if it's ran the right way.
Another question, if you played soccer instead of American football, or football instead of American football rather, which position would you have played?
Left winger. Oddly enough, I'm right-footed, and so I'm supposed to be on a right winger, but I do play soccer now, five-a-side mostly, and I'm always on the left side. I play left wing, but five-a-side, it's not really a left wing. I'm just kind of there because I can go back and forth. I really love that position. It's fun, and I'm quite honestly, I'm not even just trying to be funny. I'm a pretty good soccer player. I won't lie to you. Pretty good.
If everyone could keep questions coming in, great questions. Agata Hodor from Brasenose College has asked, if you didn't play for the New York Giants or the Atlanta Falcons at the same time, who would you have wished to play for?
That's tough, man. I don't know, because I didn't really grow up with American football. So I never really had dreams of playing for any particular team. I just kind of got good at football and I started to play. There's no team that I have any allegiance to. I would say, I would want to play for that team. I think the two teams that I played for, especially the New York Giants, those were the perfect teams for me.
Josh from Jesus College has asked, what is the biggest barrier to the future of American football in the United Kingdom?
The biggest barrier is participation in the sport. I think if we can get that up, I think that would make all the difference in the world. It's very difficult because it's very capital intensive to be able to play the game. It requires a lot of equipment. It requires a lot of effort, a lot of teaching, a lot of coaching. There's so many people involved in the game that it becomes difficult. You want to play soccer, you just pick up a ball, you go outside. You want to play basketball, you find a hoop, you go shoot, you can get good. But American football requires so much organization. And this is what we need to focus so much of our time and attention on, building that grassroots initiatives to make people and get people more involved in the sport. Because once you do, it really is a fantastic sport.
And if you had any advice for young American football players, especially from the UK, who are coming up through grassroots organizations, just starting their teen years, and they want to play in the NFL or want to play college football? What tips or advice would you give them?
We're building that infrastructure for you right now, which is what the NFL UK and the NFL Academy is all about. We are giving people the opportunity to actually have this pathway directly to colleges in the United States or the NFL. So I think, you play your game right now, you show your skills or whatever, we're there. You send us your information. We will look at you, we will scout you, we will put you in the academy if you're good enough. And if you're good enough from the academy, you go on to the college ranks. And I think that this is what the whole focus of the academy here is to give people who are here that infrastructure to be able to make it to the American football side.
Well, on the discussion and the talking point of American football at a college level, there's obviously large debate around pay and whether they deserve pay. What are your thoughts on that? I imagine you spent years at college. Did you live up to the expectation of just like eating ramen, not having anything to go on? Do you believe that D1 players should get a salary?
Again, I think you have to look at where I came from and my perspective on things. Just being able to get an education for me was, it was beyond belief. And if you look at the numbers of how much education pays you or how much you have to pay for education, I mean, you would know that it's not a cheap thing to do. So the fact that you're getting the free education, the fact that you're getting, feeding and all this stuff, if you look at it from a internship or apprenticeship type of thing, you could say that you're actually getting a pretty good deal, because a lot of interns and a lot of apprentices, they don't get paid anything. And so a lot of people, you see the amount of money that it generates for the school, but those are only the big schools. What about all the small schools? What about the players who aren't good? What about all those people who are getting scholarships, and even though they're not going to make it to the NFL, they're going to be able to get an education that carries them for the rest of their life? These are things that have to be taken into account. So do I think players should be getting paid from their schools? No. I do think that players should be able to capitalize on their likeness. Say you're the NCAA football game or you're selling your jerseys. I think you should be able to get paid from that. But should teams or should schools have to pay players? I don't think so, no.
Someone's submitted a question. It's a shame I can't say their name, but they said they love listening to your podcast and they've heard some wild stories about living in Atlanta. Did you prefer living in Atlanta or New York City?
Well, Atlanta for me. Even though when I was playing in New York, I maintained a house in Atlanta. And as soon as the season was over, I was spending like 5 months in Atlanta. Atlanta was, where a lot of the professional athletes live, because quite frankly, a lot of really rich, well-educated, professional Black people lived in Atlanta. Black Hollywood is what they called it. And so you feel really comfortable in there because you see a lot of your peers in that environment. So Atlanta for me was good, but playing in New York, and living in New York that's another story on itself, man. There's really quite nothing like it, but it's so intense and it's such a high pressure environment that you kind of almost have to get away from it when you're not playing.
James has asked, which quarterback gave you the most pleasure in sacking?
I would have to say Tony Romo. He was a very, very difficult, very slippery guy, man, very tough to sack. And I quite enjoyed getting to him. Also, Aaron Rodgers, that was fun because he was a little, mouthy. He was a little chippy. He thinks he's all that, and quite frankly, he is all that. And so having the ability to get to him and put him in the turf was fantastic. My phone is literally about to die. Give me 1 second. Let me get my charger. Yeah. Okay. Okay. This is about, because I got to get things clear. Is that cool?
Yeah, that's perfect. Quite a big question here. How important is the upcoming US election for race relations, both in and outside of sport?
Very important. I think obviously you hear Donald Trump and his the dog whistles that he's been blowing and some of the things that he's been saying. And then you see Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and some of the things that they've been doing and some of the things that they've been saying. But I think most people should really pay attention to policy and see exactly what it is that people are doing, because in my estimation, Donald Trump says a lot of things, but then he does something completely different. If you look at the policies that he's put in place and some of the things that he's done, you would say they've been very beneficial for the African-American community. And nobody knows what Joe Biden and Kamala Harris they're saying all the right things, but the Democratic Party, you can't say that with them in charge that things have been going swimmingly for the African Americans. So I think for race relations, just from a optic standpoint, you would want Donald Trump out of there. You would want somebody who is more moderate or somebody who has a better handle on race relations, which would seemingly be Joe Biden and Kamala Harris. But, how good has the Democratic Party been in actuality for Black people? We don't really, I can't really say they've been the best.
Tal has a question, less political. Which rookie QB has the best arm talent at the moment?
Wow, that's a tough one, man. I think you'd have to say Herbert with the Los Angeles Chargers. What this young man has been able to do so far has been nothing short of phenomenal. Nobody really expected him to play this year. They thought it was going to be next year. He was a little raw coming out of college, but he has hit the ground running. He's making some incredible throws, incredible reads. He doesn't look like a rookie out there at all.
Another question came in. Were the Packers right to draft a QB in the first round and start looking to the future?
Never too early. I played in a team where, I was a Pro Bowl defensive end, and we had a Hall of Fame defensive end, Michael Strahan, and they continued to draft first round defensive ends because you can never have enough good players. I think what the Packers did was they looked at their board and they saw that Jordan Love was the highest rated player on their board. And so they drafted him regardless of position. And I think you see a lot of teams do that. Unfortunately, the Packers, had Aaron Rodgers, who's still almost in the prime of his career. So he didn't look at that as a good thing, and they could have used that pick somewhere else, but that just wasn't the team's philosophy, and they did what they thought was right for the franchise.
Another question came in. Do you think you'll ever write a book one day, perhaps even, and it seems you can't escape Jason Bell, perhaps even a book together with Jason Bell?
I think me and Jason's stories are so different that we'd have to write separate books. But would I write a book about my life? I think it's fascinating. I don't know if it's something people would want to read. I've been approached about that before. It's something that I might look into in the future. We'll see. We'll see where that goes.
Have you got any potentially unheard, or even if you've told them before, funny locker room stories or anything that stands out, but you think that most people wouldn't know, or even highlights personally for you?
Funny stories. I've got quite a few of them. I've done some ridiculous things in my life, man, but nothing really comes to the top of my head. It would have to be something that I'm asked specifically, and I'll be able to come up with that right now. It's just been so many emotions in this 1 hour here that I don't know where I'm at right now. I don't know where my head is, man. This has been fantastic. I love it.
Thank you very much for coming. Very appreciative. Question come through from Tal. Why do the Chargers struggle to attract fans?
Well, they're in Los Angeles, and that is a very difficult market. And they're sharing the spotlight with another team, the Los Angeles Rams, who have been there for a long period of time. The Chargers, usually they were the San Diego Chargers, and they had quite a following in San Diego. But the Los Angeles market was very, very attractive to everybody because obviously it's LA. And so you have two teams now sharing a market, and football was never really a massive thing there. It's all really been about the Lakers. So they're trying to develop a market in they're sharing few fans is the way to say it politely. And it's going to be difficult for them, but obviously they had a plan and they executed it. We'll see how that works out for them.
Who was the most talented Giant you played with in your career?
Most talented? Oh, definitely Jason Pierre-Paul. They call him JPP. He's literally probably the most talented football player, one of the most talented football players that I've seen. He was just a freak of nature, 6'5", 270 pounds. The way he moves, it was just phenomenal to see. And he played the same position I played. He's still in the NFL now, wreaking havoc with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Question come through from Josh. What was your favorite stadium to play in? Not Wembley, favorite American stadium to play in?
Oh, Philadelphia. These guys, they had a jail in their stadium. That's how unruly those fans were. They would lock people up and take them to jail right there in the stadium. They were crazy. And so being there, knowing the success that I had against that team, they hated me. And I would come out and it was chaos. And I thrived on that. I enjoyed that environment. It was fun. The games were brutal. And so playing in Philadelphia was, for me, the best.
Question from William. Did the fact of playing for a great team like the New York Giants put any pressure on you? And did it ever affect your performance in any way?
It definitely puts a lot of pressure on you. I think the fans are so integral. They're such a part of the team there. They feel like they own the team. And so you would come out there and from the beginning, from the moment you step out your house, there are people telling you what you need to do and what they think of your performance. And so there was a lot of pressure there, massive media market, um, so many newspapers, everybody covering the Giants. It was a lot, and there was a lot of stress, and a lot of people couldn't make it. A lot of people couldn't cut it. I myself thought a lot of times I was like, man, maybe this isn't for me. But the minute you get out there and you start performing, and you perform well, there was nothing like it. It was an incredible feeling. And when you're winning there, you are literally a king, and they treat you like a king. And the fact that we're able to win 2 Super Bowls in that environment, I go back there now, and people recognize me, and I get free stuff all the time. It's fantastic.
Another question came through: is the system of relocating franchises unfair on fans?
Yes, absolutely. It is very unfair on fans, and it's something that you definitely don't see here in the United Kingdom. But again, like I said much earlier, the NFL is a business, and they will at some point do whatever they think is in the best interest of their business. And sometimes relocating to make more money for that franchise is what they have to do.
Question come through from James: do you think the Dolphins will ever win another Super Bowl, and will anyone ever match their 1972 unbeaten season?
I think it's going to be really difficult for a team to go undefeated in the NFL. There's so much parity. There's so much, so many, everybody's so close. So for somebody to go undefeated, I think is going to be very difficult. Will the Dolphins win another Super Bowl? Absolutely. At some point they will. I like what Brian Flores, their coach down there, is doing. He's building a really good culture. I think they're going to be good. They're a hard-nosed football team. They're going to be good for a couple of years.
Paul from University College has asked, why is Derrick Henry so dominant at the moment with the entire Titans franchise on his back?
Yeah, well, I think you got to look first and foremost at that offensive line and see what they're doing and the schemes that the offensive coordinator is drawing up. Because Derrick Henry is not a small guy; he's a big guy, and in order for him to be able to, get going, he needs holes. So the offensive line have to be able to create these holes for him. And then you see a guy that size with that kind of speed. This guy outruns defensive backs. He's running like a 4.3. It's rare to see something like that. So once he gets going, once he gets in the open field, nobody wants any part of that guy. And so he's able to do that. But I think a lot of the credit has to go to that offensive line.
Question coming through: who's the greatest of all time for you? Who's your GOAT?
Peyton Manning. As far as the quarterback goes, Peyton Manning will have to be the GOAT. I think the things I saw him do, it's almost difficult to explain. He was a coach on the field. He was dissecting people. The numbers he was able to put up. To me, he's the greatest quarterback, greatest player I've ever seen.
A question on your career in the media now. When becoming a pundit, did you try and model yourself based on anyone in particular, or did you just try and be yourself?
That's it. I'm just myself. It's, for me, the only thing I want to do is I want people to enjoy watching the sport. I want people to enjoy that. I want them to feel something. I want them to be happy, angry. I want them to, you love me, hate me, whatever, but I want you to feel something. And for me, that's why I'm so opinionated, and I actually say what I think. I don't want to model myself on anybody. I just wanted to be myself, and hopefully people enjoy that.
Question from Rick, quite theoretical on this. If you were head of officiating, which one rule would you change and why?
If I was head of officiating, I would change probably the pass interference calls because they're so touch and go. One thing is pass interference, another thing isn't pass interference. I think you need to give the defensive backs a little bit more leeway to be able to compete, because right now you just see offensive wide receivers running scot-free because you can't really touch them. And then at the top of their route, they're pushing people off. They're able to hand fight. They're able to do things that a defensive back, if he does the same thing, it's called holding or it's called pass interference. So for me, that pass interference call would be something that I would want to change.
Okay, this is a question from here in Oxford. Are you going to come and visit us in Oxford once the pandemic is over? And that's from Oxford Lancers, the uni team, who are in need of a decent DN.
Listen, I was supposed to be there today. If it wasn't for this tier 2 lockdown, I would have been there. I was on my way. And then they did all this stuff over here. I think it was on Friday. And so I had to, make sure it was, I'm doing this here. I would have loved to be there. Obviously, it's an incredible environment, incredible university, very prestigious. I was hearing about Oxford in Nigeria. So it's something I want to come see for myself and be in that environment and be with you guys and talk and learn myself, because I think there's quite a few things I can learn from being in that environment.
I'm told, I don't know how true this is, that potentially the Oxford Lancers might be having a dinner at some point in this year, and I think that you'd be at the top of their list for a guest speaker if they had one.
I'm there. I'll make it.
Bradley Young from St Anne's, and this is probably going to be the last question. I've got this and then one more question. Bradley Young from St Anne's, you're very free with your opinions, especially about taking a knee. Is there anything you wouldn't want to comment on whilst broadcasting, however?
No. For me, my opinions, they may seem, free, or they're very contrary, but they've been well thought through. I don't just say things just to be saying them. Everything I say, there's a reason behind it, and there's real thought behind why I'm saying that. And so if there's something you ask me and it's something that I haven't thought through or something I don't know about, I'll be like, I don't know. But if it's something that I have thought through, I will give my opinion, and whatever comes with that, and I'm okay living with it, because I know I'm just not speaking nonsense.
Final question from James. Would you ever move to Sky Sports to become a pundit, or are you BBC for life now? I'm not sure if you're able to comment on this.
Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what happens. I think obviously the prestige of working on BBC is incredible. It's the main network here. And so it's been fantastic to be able to do that. If they continue with their contract with the NFL, I'd love to stay on BBC. But if not, then we'll see, because Sky is the main sponsor, and Sky are the people who actually have the main rights for the NFL in the UK. So we'll see how that goes.
That's all we've got time for now. Thank you, everyone, for joining. But of course, thank you, Osi, for coming and joining and speaking to us. It's been an absolute pleasure and a delight. Thank you very much once again.
No worries, man. Thanks for having me, guys. I really appreciate this. This was fun.
No worries. And hopefully once the pandemic and restrictions of ease, we'll be able to have you back here in person, or even the Lancers can have you for dinner at some point.
I'm there, man. I'm there. Let's do it. It's going to be good.
Amazing. Once again, Osi, thank you ever so much for joining.
No worries.